name, man?
Hi, my name is Matt, Ranger Matt, and welcome to another day with Slick, a better you. Over the last 3 years, I've had the pleasure of meeting many different people, book authors, pastors, singers, motivational speakers, people from television, people from the daytime serial world, and people from Disney.
Why am I asking you this? I already know this. You're from where I'm at, Baltimore native.
Over these 3 years, I've heard many excellent stories. I've had many wonderful conversations, good laughs, and I've always enjoyed hearing stories from people in terms of how they got from point A to point B to where they are today. I've had a blast doing this, and I can't wait to see what else is in store. So sit back, relax, and here's a new episode of Slick, a better you.
Yeah, what are you going to do? You know, it's a messed up family.
Well, hey guys, how y'all doing today? Welcome to another day with Slick, a better you, PE Slick podcast. Happy New Year to you guys. It's been a while since I've done one, so this is the first podcast for 2023. I'm excited to have this guest on. He's a friend of mine who has blown us away as the villainist, Ashland Locke, when we're going to wrestle us, but we still love him today as Bud. Well, Josh Lewis. I got a couple of clips on the air. I'm happy that he's here. This is the tale of the Sun Country kid that rode into town on a horse he called Sid. He met a young man named Bill who told me he was from Springfield. He said, why don't you come by and meet my Uncle Josh? But then when I heard his background, I said he might need a watch, with Sonny, Annie, Olivia, and Reva. No, I don't mean the singer Reba. Then he became Ashland Locke, who didn't give a flying flock. But let me stop. I'm not going to keep going. Ladies and gentlemen, Robert Newman is in the house. I'm happy he's here. Hey, Robert.
Hey, that was pretty impressive. Well done.
Thank you. And I didn't need notes. Right on top of my head.
Well done.
And I was going to show you real quick. Yesterday, I met my godchildren. I have a godson and daughter, and a niece and nephew. And this is me with him yesterday. There I am.
Oh man, that's so great. That's so sweet. How old?
He's one now. That's David and his sister Nora. I don't have Nora's picture. I'm waiting for my buddy to send it to me. But yeah, I finally got to see him yesterday.
That's great. I'm very happy for you.
Thank you. And how are you, Mr. Godfather? How are your grandchildren
doing? As you probably know, I now have 2 grandsons.
Right.
Leo Robert is probably getting to 2.5-ish, and Rocky Joseph is going to be coming up on his first year. He was an April Fool's Day baby, April 1st.
Oh my!
And both of them have just completely and utterly stolen my heart away. I mean, they just mean everything to me now. It's the time that we have with them is exhausting. And at the same time, it's extraordinary,
Right.
And every time we're with them for my wife and I'll go watch them for 3 or 4 days sometimes when our son and daughter-in-law want to be out of town.
Mm-hmm.
And I just constantly am thinking to myself, God, this was so much easier when I was 30 years old, because now I spend a few days throwing them around all over the place. I got them up in the air and I'm throwing them over my shoulders and down my back and all kinds of stuff. And
right.
My whole body just hurts for a week after that.
I hear you.
Man, I love those boys. I really
do. What you mean? You're still in your 30s, man. You still you can run a mile and not get tired.
Yeah, no.
No. Well, as people know, like I said in the intro, for a brief while, you were Ashland Locke. How did that come about for you? I know that was a recast.
Yeah, I got a call about this time last year. It was kind of early January from my agent that Y&R was interested in this for me for this recast in LA.
Mm-hmm.
And I live in Stamford, Connecticut. So this is that's already an issue.
Mm.
But they were looking for 3 or 4 months, I think, at that time, and I said, yeah, I'll think about it. I can, let's go ahead and take the next step, and you can start talking to them about that. And then they came back, and I've told this story before, where they came back and suddenly they wanted a 3-year contract, 3 years, and I was like, no, I'm not going to move out to LA right now. That's just not going to happen. But let's talk about some other things. And we finally landed on basically just to make it easier to understand, basically a 6 month, 2 6-month options totaling a year.
Right.
But the idea was pretty much always that they were going to probably kill off this character by the end of that first 6-month deal, which is what happened.
Right.
So I mean, I only had a few days to sort of get myself together, get myself moved out to Los Angeles for what would be, I knew, at least 6 months.
Mm.
And God, they sent me, I think I had 5 scripts in the first 3 days on that show, 5 episodes in the first 3 days on that show.
Wow.
And I had about, I don't know, less than a week to prepare for that.
Mm-hmm.
I had never watched the show, so I didn't know anything about the character, really. I had a Zoom meeting with the head writer, Josh, and the executive producer at that time. And they filled me in on a lot of background of the character. And I just did the work that I had done 100 times before, and figured out how I wanted to play the character, and got thrown in there in the studio and started work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was ironic for my mother, because she, like everybody else, she's known you for years as Josh Lewis, and she's getting ready to turn 66, 67 this year, one of the two.
Yeah.
And when she first saw you, she was like, Josh Lewis in General City. And your first scenes with Eric Brayton, it was just like, Josh and Victor Newman. It's ironic.
Yeah. And also for a lot of my Guiding Light fans to see me play such a nasty character, I think was they had to do quite a lot of mental gymnastics to kind of figure that out. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what was it like working with Amelia Victoria?
Amelia?
Yeah.
Amelia's great.
Mm-hmm.
She's a professional through and through. And I always thought for her, it must've been a little tricky to go from, one guy playing this role to another guy playing this role in probably less than a week. I don't know exactly the time frame of the last time. Sorry, his name just went out of my head. The actor that played the role before I took it over.
Richard
Berge.
Yeah.
I don't know when Richard was on in the studio, the last time he was in the studio, but it was probably only a few days before I was in the studio. And so, to work with somebody like him for 6 months and then have somebody like me come in just like that must have been a big transition for her too. But right from the very beginning, she was very much open to anything I threw at her, which was
right.
Great. And because I was, again, I never saw Richard's performance, but I know we're very different kinds of actors. So, I imagine there were quite a few differences there for her to think about. And then as our time progressed together, I felt like we became a good team. It was a tough story to tell, I think, for actors. I think for her, I don't want to speak for her, but I've been in this situation before where I know when you're the actor when you're playing the character who's being conned or played by somebody else, it's always a difficult situation because you feel like your character is always like, why would my character, believe this? Why would my character do this? Why would that happens a lot.
Right.
I've been through enough on Guiding Light. I've been through enough Annies and Sunnies and,
Olivia, Reva, Cassie,
where I was constantly being sort of played or conned in some form, in some way. I know as the actor, it's tough because you got to continually sort of motivate your actions as the character, but with your eyes a little bit closed to how you think you might handle that situation. So for her, I would imagine that was a deal. But I will say, all the times that Ron Raines or Chris Bernot or Michael Zaslow had told me about how great it is to play a bad guy. It's pretty great to play a bad guy.
Yeah, I mean, it was something different,
It's pretty fun, yeah. Well, I play a lot of bad guys on stage. Sweeney Todd's a bad guy.
Right.
Sidney Brule in Death Trap is a bad guy. George and Virginia Woolf is a bad guy. I mean, to some extent.
Yeah.
But on the soap, it's just fun because you get to just say these outrageous things to other characters, and they pretty much have to stand there and take it to some extent. But I developed a pretty good relationship with most of the actors on the show, and some I saw more frequently than others. But overall, it was a pretty great experience.
Yeah, it seemed like a fun ride, and I have to say, you look good for a dead man who got his lights knocked out, and then they threw your body in the car and took it off the victim.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know what happened to Ashlyn after I shot my last scene because, again, I don't, other than bits and pieces I picked up on social media, there was something. I know the body disappeared, and
yeah,
I was there for that, but otherwise, I something about. What did you say? Something about a cliff and a body.
I'll blow the whistle for you. Victor had his men throw his body in the car, and it went off a cliff. So they think you
it looked like a car crash.
Yeah, they did that, but it was all Victor.
Okay, makes sense.
Man, what do you think it is about daytime that still draws fans even today? I mean, I'm sure there's still people when they see you, they still call you Josh Lewis, and now Ashlyn and other things you've done.
Well, I think I can actually kind of address that from in this way that I'm thinking about the people that I meet now who followed Guiding Light for all those years, and how they're just so sad still about the show not being on the air anymore. It's just really, you can tell. I've had people break out in tears with me on the street or in a mall or something because they just missed the show so terribly.
Right.
And I think, that because of the 5-day a week nature of soap opera, 5 episodes a week, that people just really get these characters all become part of their family, right? And they feel like they're a family member with the Lewises or with the Spaldings, and they really want to know what's going on with Josh and Reba. I have people all the time ask me, like, what do you think Josh and Reba are doing now? And I'm like, my logical mind is like, they're characters in a play. They don't exist. They're not real. But I know what they're asking, I think. I mean, and sometimes I'll jokingly say, well, I think Kim's in New Jersey right now with her grandkids, and I know I'm doing this play over, or whatever. But I think that they want to know, like, they want to kind of figure out, like, sometimes I'll say they're probably on their 5th marriage by now to each other. And in the interim, the last decade or more, they've probably both been married to someone else. Because that's predictable for Josh and Reba. But I think that people really get attached to these characters, and I think that's true on any of the soaps. I think it's the 5 episode a week nature of the storytelling.
Right.
And and you see people complain all the time on social media about the storyline being good or bad, or this character would never do this, or this character would never do that. That's all part of it too. So it's sort of that, like, a big dysfunctional family,
right?
That sure, it may be tough at Thanksgiving and Christmas, but you love your family and they're part of who you are, and you would hate to be without them.
Right.
So when a show like Guiding Light goes away, I think that's when you really see how attached people were to the show, whether they were even aware of it or not.
Yeah. Well, I didn't ask this the last time I talked to you. I mean, I don't know if you could share a little light on this, but I was going to ask you if you recall your experiences. And I found a clip or two that I have, and some of it's in the tribute that I got. We're going to play in a few. But what was your experiences like? You was on General Hospital as Prescott and Santa Barbara as Kirk, and I know Kirk was kind of a bad guy on Santa Barbara.
Yeah, so was Prescott.
Mhm.
I held Holly hostage on a train. I remember that was Emma Samms, I think. Yeah, I
Yeah,
kidnapped her and held her hostage on a train for what seemed like forever. I was only on the show for I think 4 months or something. They were very different experiences. And this will sound disparaging toward General Hospital, but this keep in mind this is in 1980. Let me think.
85.
Yeah, 85. This is a long decades ago. But
Hmm.
General Hospital was, and Gloria Monty was still there, and she and I just didn't click because Gloria ran her studio on fear and paranoia.
Mm.
And she really blew up at actors and directors all the time. People were constantly feeling like they could be fired tomorrow. This was my take on the show.
Right.
And I was only there, on a short-term contract, but I'm not easily intimidated. I don't function well under fear. In our guiding light world, as wonderful as a guy as Paul Rausch could be, he was very much the same way, where he really ran that studio hard, and
Right.
he blew up at actors, constantly, and could be very demeaning. I think about in today's current culture, I don't think a Paul Rausch could survive, or a Gloria Monty for that matter. I think they somebody would bring them up on some kind of charges or something like that. But
Right.
I just didn't respond to her, and I think that really made her nuts. And also the character on General Hospital wasn't really what I kind of hoped it was going to be.
Mm.
It was fine, but my time there, I don't really have any particularly fond memories of. I remember liking a lot of the actors I was working with.
Right.
And then you cut to Santa Barbara, and I that was just a 6-week thing where I came in and wreaked havoc and then left, and that was great. I liked the short term, like come in, do something terrible, and go away kind of thing.
Right.
That role was replacing Joseph Bottoms, who was Sam
Right.
Bottoms and Timothy Bottoms' brother.
Hmm.
And he would come in as this character once a year or so for 6 weeks, wreak havoc, and leave. And at one point, they had him written in, but he had to go shoot a movie in Hawaii, I think, or something like that. And they called me, and I came in and played the role for that 6 weeks. And I really was, I really enjoyed a good friendship with A. Martinez while I was working there, and then several of the other people there too. I liked Santa Barbara, and at the end of my run on Santa Barbara, I remember sitting with Jill Farron Phelps,
Right.
who I think was a producer on that show, not the executive producer, I don't think, and
Hmm.
saying, if you guys want me to come in for, full time, I think I would be interested in that. But then, of course, I was back on Guiding Light, within the next couple of months. So, um, but I liked working on Santa Barbara, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the character. Um, got along great with A and Marcy and all that, and that was nice.
It's ironic that
Good friend.
because there's a few clips that I found of you on there, and it's ironic that Marcy would later come on Gotten Light as Tangy.
Yeah, that was a
That's
that was
another
a
one I forgot.
that was
Even
a
with so
thing.
many
Yeah,
females on that show.
well, that was doomed from the beginning in terms of the Josh Tansey relationship. I remember they did a ton of publicity with the two of us before she even started,
Hmm.
and it was all talking about chemistry and how great these characters were going to be together. And I remember talking in interviews about it, and chemistry is not something that you can predict. It
Right.
really just isn't. It's something, and it's not something you can predetermine is going to happen. because it takes time for chemistry to happen. It just does.
Right.
You know, Kim and I have a chemistry together. We still have it today, even when we're on stage today. There's a chemistry in our working together, but it's after years of working together. It's not something that's magical that happens, you know. And so I remember being concerned before they even started actually taping the story of Josh and Tangi that, you know, we're setting up a high bar here. We're setting up expectations for something really wonderful. And then to top it off, they didn't really write it, honestly. It was like, it was sort of like a secondary storyline another issue there I remember having was that the characters had fallen in love
Right.
off camera before she even arrived.
Right.
You never saw them on camera falling in love. And again, I think that whole process is where the chemistry comes into play with
Mm.
Blonde Daytime.
Pardon that. I live by a fire station, so it's like I don't know, it could be 1 a.m. and here they come. Yeah, I mean, I've seen episodes, of course, from over the years in the 90s when Marcy came on, and I didn't really have a lot to say about that. Plus, it was really brief because she didn't stay on too long. And then when she was with you, they paired her with Rick Hurst and Ron Rings, and then she was gone. She wasn't on that long. Then she went back to All My Children. So
I kind of don't think her heart was in it for some reason. I just, you know, I never felt like she really. Yeah, I don't know. I shouldn't go any further down that road, but you know, I just. You know, sometimes a show just isn't a good, you know, I just got finished saying that my time on General Hospital, and remember both of those gigs for me, General Hospital and Santa Barbara, were post Guiding Light.
right.
I'd already done my first 3 years on Guiding Light. And those gigs happened in the 2 years I was away from Guiding Light.
Right.
And so I had my soap opera chops pretty honed by then. Josh and Reva were already a thing, right?
Right.
And but for me, one was a good fit and the other one wasn't. And I think that can happen, you know, on for any project.
Yeah. You know, it's something about Josh and Reva. You know, even today, it's like they just those two. You know, no matter who was writing over the years, it's like they always wrote, and it's like you and Reba, other than Philip and Beth, Josh and Reba was like that solid couple in Springfield. Even when they broke you up, y'all always found your way back. Even at the end, I mean, they didn't really explain Jeffrey's. You know, y'all thought he was dead, but he was chasing Edmund and alive. Then a year later, y'all ride off in this truck, and it's like, well, whatever happened with Jeffrey though? We thought he was dead, but he was chasing Edmund. But it's like y'all just have this. You and Kim, it's just this dynamic, you know, and that's something I've always loved. I mean, even watching as a kid, I thought y'all was like a natural couple because it was just y'all clicked, you know.
Well, again, that's a lot of decades of working together.
Mm.
It really is. I mean, it's just not something that happens, you know, magically or, you know, like in the first day. Moving forward to back to your question about Ashlyn and Victoria, not so much about Amelia, but you know, I had a sense in those first, you know, people talked about sort of a lack of chemistry. Sometimes, you know, you'd see something posted on Twitter or whatever about the lack of chemistry between myself and Amelia. But I feel like first of all, I came into the story right at the point when she starts suspecting that he's not really who he says he is anyway, or what he says he is anyway.
Right.
And then secondly, you know, again, it takes time. You know, we're two very different actors, and we don't know each other. We've never met each other, and we're trying to sort of build this, you know, in a similar way to what I just said about Josh and Tangi falling in love off camera. I never got to play the scenes with Amelia where Ashlyn and Victoria actually fell in love.
Right.
My task was to play the scenes that he loved her completely, which is something that the head writer and I talked about quite a bit in advance. So I had to come into the middle of that story. So the audience never saw me, Robert, and Amelia playing the scenes that led up to whatever their relationship was. I just came in and sort of So I think that was a lot of the audience adjusting to a different actor playing the role, Amelia adjusting to a different actor playing the role, and but again, I felt like by the time we got to the end of that run, she and I had found our rhythms with each other, and it was working pretty well.
Right. Plus, I guess it had to have been kind of like a readjustment a little bit, because it's been some times since you've been on a soap opera since Guiding Light ended.
Yeah, the first month was kind of out of body-ish.
Yeah,
because I was trying to get my brain to work in that way again, and dealing with multiple pages every single day pretty much. So a lot of it was me doing a lot of technical work up here to get things to work properly in this format. It's such an unforgiving format.
right.
It just is. Their hopes are to have everything in one take. They're very they will adjust to it when it's not in one take, but there's a lot of pressure to get things done at just this ridiculous speed. And I would go in there some mornings at 7 a.m. and I'd have the first 6 scenes of the day.
Right.
I'd be walking out of the studio at 10 a.m. and on the golf course by noon. But that's how fast you'd do some rehearsal, and then I think at 8:30 we'd start rolling tape, and if you had the first 6 scenes, you could be done certainly be done in 90 minutes.
Wow. You're
That's
educating
how
me.
fast it goes. Yeah.
Right. I mean, I'm learning as I go about it. I mean, because it's like, for me growing up watching soaps, it's like I used to wonder would anything be improv. Like let's say you and Reva talk and it went from like 5 or 8 minutes long. That's a lot of dialogue to remember in like for 8-9 minutes before it goes to commercial or somebody else's scenes. Right. So that's, I used to wonder that about soaps back then. It's like, did they ever improv anything? Because I memorize so much dialogue and to try to squeeze that knowledge in for like 5, 8 minutes, 10 minutes long. That might be a lot on the brain. And then you might have other scenes to go before the end of the episode. Well, I think I filmed one episode a day, right?
One is one of the nice things that they do on Young and the Restless is they really didn't write any scenes more than 3 or 4 pages long.
Okay.
Back in the day, back when Doug Marlin was writing the show and Pam Long was writing the show on Guiding Light, Kim and I would have easily 8-page scenes in the middle of the show. You have the short prologue, you have the short epilogue, bookending a show, but in the middle of the show, you could easily have these. We would have 8-page scenes, sure, and where we would just be talking to each other for, like you said, 8 minutes, 9 minutes, 10 minutes. I was thankful at Young and the Restless that the scenes were shorter, because it gave you more of an opportunity, the ability to sort of cram something in, shoot it, and then forget it and go to the next one and cram that and then shoot it. But at Guiding Light, you really had to be well prepared in a different way before you came to the studio on any given day. Because if you had those 8 solid pages in a row and you had 3 or 4 of those scenes in a single episode, which could happen, you really had to. Everybody had their own system, their own way of doing things, but that could be really challenging, but also really rewarding, because in those longer scenes, you could really have an arc that would take you, from where you are at the beginning of a scene on this journey with, Josh and Reva together, and where are they at the end of the scene? And then the bigger arc, which is where are they at the beginning of this episode? Where are they at the end of this episode? And then the bigger arc, which is the week, and then the bigger of the month, so everything sort of is you're looking for a journey.
Right.
That's what you want, is a journey. As an actor, that's what you want, to get you through the full episode. How am I different in the epilogue than I was in the prologue?
Right.
And that's the same thing whenever I do a play.
Mm-hmm.
Plays are much more, predictable in that way. When I play Tevye or Sweeney or Don Quixote, there's an arc that happens from the beginning of the play to the end of the play. And you take this fantastic journey in some of these roles throughout the course of the play. And the trick is, where do you start and where do you finish?
Okay. I've seen you posted some clips on YouTube of some of you and Kim singing, or you singing at some of your theaters, and I seen one picture of you, and I don't have it on me, but you would dress up as a cute woman. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, Edna.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
yeah. I was like, okay.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great role. I love that role. So
Right.
yeah, for Hairspray, the role of Edna, the mother,
Mm-hmm.
is played by a man. That's the way John Waters wrote the film
Right.
that the musical is based on, and that's traditionally how the role is always played. Although in the way things have changed now, right?
Right.
In the way we're casting now, I just had an interesting conversation with my daughter recently about whether or not Edna could be played. Like, why couldn't Kim Zimmer play Edna? She'd be great in the role. Why not?
Right.
But that would go against the purposes of the original author, John Waters, because he wanted that role in particular to challenge people's thinking about gender. And this
Right.
was back in the 50s.
Mm-hmm.
This wasn't now when we're talking about gender all the time. This was way back in the 50s, but he wanted to challenge the way people think about gender
Right.
through that role. So yeah, I had the opportunity to play Edna. My favorite story about that was I was looking for I needed to find a pair of size 12 pumps,
Mm-hmm.
which is not easy to find, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I was in Capezio, which is a very famous shoe salesman for theater people down in New York on Broadway.
Right.
And I was trying on all of these women's shoes.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly the people next to me, who were Italian, suddenly said, "Joshua? Sentieri?" Because, in Italian, it's Sentieri. And, Guiding Light was very famous in Italy. It still is today.
Right.
And so these people recognized me, and I always thought how funny this was, that this Italian family recognized me in a shoe store while I was trying on women's shoes. And I thought, I wonder what story they've told about that over the years, Yeah, and then they put you in basically in a fat suit, because Edna's a very big woman.
Mm-hmm.
And the wig and the makeup and everything else, and it was a joy. It was weirdly, it reminded me a lot of playing Tevye, because the story of Edna is the parent of a daughter, in this case the mother of a daughter, and the daughter is changing the way she thinks about traditional values throughout the entire play. And of course Tevye has three daughters who are constantly changing the way he thinks about traditional values but he loves them anyway. And Edna loves her daughter relentlessly anyway.
Right.
To me, they were very similar kinds of roles, actually.
Well, Tony Award, right? Well, we're gonna talk a bit about GL. I got some clips I'm gonna show you. I've been showing clips when I do my interviews now. But real quick, one fan had asked, because I got a few watching, what was your intake toward the end of the show when they went from regular production shooting to doing the outside location kind of shooting?
That was tough. It was just really tough. It was really hard from our end because, we all wanted it to work the best that it could, but it was just such a difficult transition to make, for us too. It really was. I got the idea of what they wanted. Friday Night Lights was a big show back in those days, and
Right.
it was all shot sort of handheld and herky jerky and sort of on the fly. It always looked like it was sort of on the fly, and they were breaking fourth walls. Not really breaking fourth walls, but breaking the line of proscenium that is traditionally kept even when you're doing camera work. So if you think about a soap opera set, it's three walls, like a theater set would be, right? So in a theater set, you have three walls, two on the side, one on the back, and then the proscenium, which is the invisible fourth wall. So
Right.
on a soap opera set, you would have the same thing with the 3 cameras, and they would never break. A camera would never reposition itself on the back wall and shoot an angle from that side, so you were always shooting in these directions. But when we
Right.
started that handheld thing, they were just all over the place. And then outside in Peapack, New Jersey, and inside in these now permanent sets with 4 walls. They built permanent sets with 4 walls in them.
Right.
And the lighting guys were trying to figure out, the sound guys were trying to figure it out, the camera guys were trying to figure out, we were trying to figure it out. And it was almost like if we had taken like 3 months dark and just worked on it ourselves, I think then we would have come to a pretty good system of shooting.
Right.
But we can't, on soaps, you can't do that. You have to, there's a product you have to generate 5 days a week.
Right.
And so to me, all of the transition that should have taken place off camera, if we were going to go to a system like that, had to happen on camera. And I do think by the time we got to the end of it, toward the end of that 2-year period, we were kind of getting the hang of it. We were figuring it out.
Yeah.
And it was looking better. And I think the audience was just adjusting to what it was. And, but it was just a really, really difficult transition to make. Again, on our side, as much as it was for the audience watching it.
Yeah, it took, I think it took again for me to adjust too, because it was like, for me at first, I mean, I know I wasn't a part of that decision, but it's like when you watching that and you don't see that on none of the other soap operas, it's like a high school or college behind the scenes film. But well, Brian Buffington kind of said that when I talked to him about it, because he commented on that. But it took a while to adjust, but I kind of got the hang of it a bit toward the end. And like you said, by the time the show had ended, it was like everything was coming together and it was adjustable. I mean, I don't know if that would have kept going if the show was still on the air or not. But yeah, I thought it was new. And it was new to see, getting shots of like you with somebody running in the park or at the store. Rick was eating a hot dog in the store once in a random scene. But yeah.
Well, and I know like there would be exteriors where you'd have snow in one scene and not snow in the other scene and things like that. I saw those. Sometimes they hit something just right. I remember weirdly I don't remember what the context of the scenes were, but I was in a graveyard outside with David McDonald. And what was the name of his character?
Edmund.
And it started snowing right when we started shooting the scenes. And I remember seeing those later, and they were beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
It really looked beautiful. You had real snow happening. We're in this graveyard. I mean, they weren't romantic scenes or anything like that, but it was they were really beautiful shots, and that was just like a happy accident that happened that day. Kind of like if you go way back to Josh and Reva's first wedding.
Mm-hmm.
There's a shot there that just grabs my heart every time I see it. And it's of Reva in the rowboat coming across the lake in that white dress with the big hat. And Morgan Dillon is rowing the boat. And it's gorgeous. Such a beautiful shot. And the lighting was absolutely perfect in that moment on that day. And in a weird way, that's not to take credit away from Joanne Sedgwick, who directed that segment, but it was kind of luck of the draw that they happened to hit the lighting so perfectly in that shot.
Right.
If you go back and look at it, it's a beautiful shot. We had a couple of those from time to time in PPAC, but and also keep in mind though that whole change, the purpose of that change had to do with keeping us on the air for another 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thankful for that. Not just for me, but for the fans. We would have been canceled flat out 2 years earlier if Ellen Wheeler hadn't made a deal with CBS that we would go to this new format in order to save money, because that was the whole thing, to save money. If she hadn't struck that deal with them, we would have been off the air 2 years earlier than we were. Some fans go, well, it sucked. You should have gone off the air. Other fans go, well, I'm glad we got 2 more years of storytelling. So, but that was, at least that's what we were told was the main reasoning behind it.
Yeah.
And even now, when I worked on Y&R, it's amazing to me how money just drives everything.
Right.
Everything, or lack of money drives everything, is what I should say. And Y&R actually spends money. But you'll notice in Y&R, whenever you're in a restaurant or a bar, there's no one else there.
Right.
No customers, right?
Right.
There's maybe a maitre d' or a bartender, but there's no customers ever. And that's because in terms of budget, they can't afford anymore to bring on, 20 background performers to play customers in the restaurant when they're doing scenes in a restaurant. They just can't afford it. So you've got empty restaurants, empty bars, empty hotel lobbies, everything. There's just aren't people there. That's a budget-driven issue.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that, because I understand a little better since you said that. I got a clip I'm going to play. I was going to ask you to say a few words about this gentleman here that we recently lost. I got a clip of you two together. I'm going to play.
Sometimes, yeah, it's a little tough. I mean, like at bedtime. You've got a 9 o'clock bedtime. You got the whole routine worked out where you've got supper and games and then brushing their teeth and all that stuff. You get them down into bed. You think they're asleep, right? Mm-hmm. You go downstairs. Little alone time with your wife is the first chance you've had to relax. You're all just taking it easy. And all of a sudden you hear a scream from upstairs, and they have lied to you. They're not sleeping, they are playing. In fact, Shane has stolen Mara's doll and is playing Operation Dolly Drop from the top of the stairs, and the whole thing starts all over again.
They lied to you.
Yes, they do.
So what keeps you going in all this?
Adrenaline and love.
I'd like to keep her away from her brother, but that's a losing battle.
Yeah, those two seem pretty close these days.
You just sent a cold chill down my spine. Thanks, Josh.
That first scene right there, that's good writing right there. That was cracking me up. That was really good dialogue.
I saw you laughing.
Yeah. Wow. God. See, that's a typical thing where somebody plays a scene and I have no memory at all about any of that scene at all.
Right.
But Jerry Vidorn he's just everything, he was the real deal. And he's everything that people say about him. He was everything that people say about him. He was a genuinely nice, giving, good man. And that's what everybody will tell you about Jerry Vidorn. That's what Grant will tell you, and Michael will tell you, and anybody who ever worked with Jerry will say that about him. And it's 100% true. He's not like a really good guy, but every once in a while he was not a good guy. He was just a really genuinely good guy. And he carried, I've said before that he's one of the main reasons that I ended up doing 14 years of service with the union. Jerry got me into that. He taught me to care about my fellow actors and what was going on in our studio and other studios in New York and LA,
right?
Particularly in the world of daytime television, and to step up to the plate and stand up for people, stand up for my fellow actors, in situations, and he had been the AFTRA deputy on our show for many years, which was the actors' representative for the union that acts as a go-between between the producers and the union, or the actors and the producers. So the actors come to the deputy, and the deputy goes to the union, and the union goes to the producers. And, there's a whole kind of line that happens there.
Right.
And then he asked me to step in to that position when he just couldn't do it anymore. And that got me started. And then I was later, asked to be on the local board in New York and the national board of SAG, then AFTRA in the national board. And then when SAG-AFTRA merged, when the merger happened, I was the first national vice president for actors and performers in SAG-AFTRA.
Right.
And after that, I left. After a couple of years of that, I left because I had been doing it for 14 years and I felt like I'd done it enough. But you know, he was a pretty big influence for me and a mentor in the studio in terms of, you know, not only just being an actor's actor, but just being a good guy to work with.
Oh, absolutely. You know, I had the pleasure of having him on 2 times. I did one with him and Liz, and I did a Spalding reunion with him in it as well. And he was just a down to earth, nice guy. You know, I love what he did as Ross and One Life to Live as well. I mean, he was, you know, Guiding Light has had many veterans on for many years, including you and Kim. And he was on this since 1979 before y'all came. And it was like, you know, veterans, and he was one of them. I jokingly told him I could have seen him as president of the United States. You know, he could have saved the world.
Maybe.
Yeah,
he's a good guy.
Yeah. Have you been in touch with Jordan Clark? How is he doing?
I don't know today how Jordan's doing. I'm sad to say I have not been in touch with Jordan. I don't think I've, you know, I have to get him on the phone, but I have no idea how he's doing. And I'm really sorry to say that. The last I saw him was a couple of years ago, even, I think. But I haven't heard anything. It's, you know, all out of touch with people. It's just, you think you're going to be in touch all the time and then you're not. But you just reminded me, as I get reminded every once in a while, oh, I got to get in touch with Jordan and see how he's doing.
Yeah. What is your plans so far for the year? I mean, I know the last thing I seen you, somebody posted you did an episode of Law and Order. Is anything you going to work on right now, as far as theater or film?
Well, I kind of laid low after Y&R last year. I did shoot the Law and Order, Law and Order thing. I also shot just a small thing on an episode of a new Apple TV series called Extrapolations that's coming out soon. It has to do with it's like a futuristic look at climate change. I worked with Diane Lane and Kit Harington, Jon Snow. So I had a nice couple of scenes with the two of them. So that'll be out later. And right now I'm starting to look at different theater gigs here and there. I'm always up for and auditioning for, you know, guest spots on. It's weird. I have a love-hate relationship though with television right now. These guest star roles that you do, they pay the bills, but they're not terribly fulfilling. I'll just put it that way. And actually that Law and Order is a good example where when they first reached out to me for that role, there were 3 scenes involving this prison warden,
right?
Who was really struggling with the death of one of his officers in the prison, and by the time they hired me, it was 2 scenes, and then when I got to the set, it was 1 scene on a witness stand. So you know, and that happened with. What was it? Chasing Amy? What was the name of that show? It was on last year. I think that's right. But I had a guest spot on a show where the entirety of my appearance on the show was me opening the front door to a guy's house and saying, "Oh, hello, young lady. Are you lost?" or something like that. That was 3. There were 3 or 4 scenes when I first read for that. And then that was cut down to 2. And then when I got there, it was just that 1 scene.
Right.
And you kind of go, and I get that because they're telling, you know, you're guesting on a show. They're telling a story about all the other characters on the show. It's not your story. But I just find with a lot of those single episode things that there's just, again, back to the arc that I was talking about earlier, there's no arc to play.
Right.
You're just in there saying a few lines of dialogue and leaving. And I just don't find that particularly interesting or fulfilling. I think I'm going to try to stay more focused on theater work around the country. You know, there's some things I'm up for now, but I never talk about anything until I've signed on the dotted line. So, but there's a couple of theater things that I'm really interested in right now. that are sort of irons in the fire, and then the guest spot nighttime stuff just comes. Every week I get a different request for an audition for something, and
Right.
I live in a normal actor's world where you have to do 20 auditions to get one thing.
Well, yeah.
Even though I have this long, extensive background in television, I
Mm,
still have to audition for things, and you still just I audition now, and I just assume I'm not going to get the role. It's just easier for me to handle it mentally that way.
mm,
And all auditions now are self tapes, where my agent sends me the scene, and this is true for theater too. I tape the scene. I have downstairs in my basement. I have a blue backdrop, and I have some lights set up and a tripod. And my wife and I go downstairs. My wife Britt, who was an actress herself way back on Loving back in the day,
oh,
and she reads the lines opposite me, and we tape scenes. I come upstairs. I transfer them to this laptop I'm talking to you on right now, and
right.
put them onto iMovie and edit them, and then I upload them to a thing that the casting director sends me, and they go off to the casting director and my agent. And I
Okay.
either go back or I don't. And that's how actors work now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What kind of music do you listen to?
Well, I can tell you this, that I was just having a conversation with a friend about the New Year's Eve parties
Hmm.
that are on television. And we were just laughing about, he's about my age, how we don't know any of the singers that they have. I don't know any of the acts, any of the bands. It's like I just don't pay attention anymore to current music. So I'm always locked into my old. Most people know I'm a Springsteen fan through and through, and I've seen him in concert 10 times or something like that, and
My boy.
so I'm still always listening to Springsteen. And then just Sting and Elton John and Rod Stewart and Stevie Wonder. And, these were the guys I grew up with, the people I grew up with. And then going back to like Janis Joplin and the Mamas and the Papas and the Turtles. And, I'm constantly enamored by how great music has been. And I have no opinion on how music is today, because I hear so little. Most of what I hear in music today is on soundtracks of films that I watch.
Right.
But I just don't follow current. I can't tell one diva from the next.
I'm the same way. I'm old school. Yeah.
And back when they started with boy bands, I couldn't tell one from the next. I just didn't care. I just like good old rock and roll, man. I just watched George and Tammy, a multi-episode thing on George Jones and Tammy Wynette. And I'm not a country guy, but that was
right.
I did enjoy seeing what's her name, who just was at the White House getting a award, Amy Grant.
Okay.
I did enjoy it. I've liked Amy Grant over the years, and I enjoyed seeing her getting honored at the White House last month. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm a fan of her too, because she's a Christian singer now. And before that, I knew her from
She was a Christian singer then. And then she got more secular. She's become more secular over the years.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I've seen her sing with Peter Cetera from Chicago, and that's where I knew her from that. And then I found out, oh, okay, she's a gospel singer. I didn't know that. But
but I listened to her gospel back then too. And it's pretty, she still has my favorite Christmas album, which is Tennessee Christmas. So
Reverend Josh.
Yeah.
Well, I did a tribute video to you, sir. Are you ready to see it?
Sure.
Okay. It's a song that they played when they did a tribute to Guy in White back in 2002. I used that. So here we go.
There are places I remember all my life, though some have changed, some forever, not for better, and some have gone, and some remain. All these places had their moments, friends I still can recall. Some are dead and some are living in my life. I love them all.
You big galump.
But of all these friends and lovers, there is no one compares with you, and these memories lose their meaning when I think of love as something new. Though I know I'll never ever lose affection for people and things that went before. I know I'll often stop and think about them in my life. I love you more. Though I know I'll never ever lose affection for people and things that went before. I know I'll often stop and think of them, but in my life I loved you more. I love you more. I love you more.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I even got the clips of you on Santa Barbara and GH. And I gotta say, you and Crystal look very comfortable in that bid. And I'm a GL fan. I don't even remember that. When I came across it, I'm like, I don't remember that. That's interesting.
I love Crystal.
Yeah.
I like working with her on the show. I like working with her from time to time on her web series now, and but I love Crystal. You were talking before about improv, asking about improv. I don't know that I wouldn't call it improv, but we did some ad-libbing from time to time, and Big Galumph was definitely me. That was definitely not written in the script. When I said that to Billy, that was definitely
Right.
written in the script.
Yeah.
I also remember that moment, that thing about pulling Reva into the hot tub like that. And, we talked so much about that before we did it, because that's a one take thing
Mm-hmm.
where you got to get it right, in one take, because otherwise she's going back to wardrobe and hair, and you got to, stop everything for an hour to do a second take. So,
Right.
and none of us really knew if she might get hurt in that. But she was just 100%, gung ho, like is about everything.
Mm-hmm.
And we just went for it, and it worked out pretty great, And then was that John C. Riley on Santa Barbara or General Hospital?
Oh, that was General Hospital.
Yeah, and was that John Riley? Is that his name?
Yeah.
he's a sweet guy. He was a sweet guy. Yeah, I
Yeah.
remember liking. He and I got along great when I was shooting that show. Yeah, he was one of the good things about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know I had that scene twice with you flipping Kim into the water, but I remember just looking at that. I've seen it, over the years, but it's just like wow, you just took.
Yeah, yeah, that was just
Strong
going for
guy.
it. That was just 100% going for it. I don't even think there was a stunt person in the studio that day for that. I think we just did it.
Yeah.
And I'm not even sure it wasn't my idea. It probably was my idea, that I don't remember what the script said. I think there was something about he pulls her into the hot tub, and I think we just talked about like, what if I just, bring her right over my shoulder, and it worked. Nobody
Yeah.
got hurt, thank God.
Yeah. One
Yeah.
take guy, Um,
Well,
yeah.
even with those, we had stuntmen a lot back then, and
Mhm.
because I was getting beat up a lot back then too, especially when Josh was a bad guy. And I remember we had a thing when John Wesley Shipp uh, threw a punch at me, and
Really?
they had put together this table where they had scored the legs so that the idea was that he would. I think he actually threw me back onto a table, and the table would collapse under me. But
Mhm.
they had specifically told me it was designed so it would kind of collapse twice, so it wouldn't just be too jarring for me. And he either pushed me or punched me, and I flew back on the table, and the whole thing just disintegrated under my body, and my back hurt for like a week. I mean, you just never know with stuff like that when something small is going to go wrong. And I was young then, and I was probably all of 25 years old then, and in pretty great shape, but I still got hurt doing it. You never know.
Right.
And I remember John and I, this another John thing, we were doing a scene on location on an island on St. Croix, I think,
Mhm.
and both of us ended up with bloody feet. And we found out later that the deserted beach we were shooting on was a big haunt for party people, and there was
Oh,
spreads of broken bottles all over the
golly.
place. And we both were like, "Hey, Robert, your feet are bleeding." And I'm like, "Yeah, John, your feet are bleeding too." And we had a fight there too, and we had blood on our, just different parts of our body because we were rolling around in this glass strewn sand. Yeah.
Well, I gotta say, thank God you didn't break any toes, and that it wasn't in the clip, but the scene where it was in '88. It was the island scene with you and Kim, and you were shirtless. Y'all was kissing in the water, and you was running around, and
With Kim?
yeah, it was in the '80s. She was trying to save Josh from drowning, and then I ended up
Oh,
getting back
right.
together. Yeah,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. I would say thank God that day I didn't hit no bottle because that was a lot of running and tripping around y'all two.
Yeah, I had scenes I remember with Cassie in water, where I pulled her out of the water. The with Nicole Forster as Cassie, I
Hmm.
pulled her out of the water. Yeah, that was a different time when they would build like a pool. I remember the one you're talking about. Bruce Berry directed that, and they built a big swimming pool there, and he actually developed a it wasn't a camera that went underwater, but he developed some kind of mirror system where you could point down with the camera and the mirrors would shoot underwater. And it was also supposed to be a fake snowy day. So if you go back and look at that scene now, you'll see a lot of fake plastic snowflakes floating through the water while we're underwater.
I gotta find that. I don't remember
Yeah,
that.
yeah. It's just all that stuff that happens backstage that people, you hope people don't know anything about or don't notice. But there's always weird things that happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I gotta say, Robert, thank you for the legacy that you've done. I mean, quite, Josh and Kirk, Preston, Ashland, and the Primetime Rose theater.
Thank you.
Even as Josh, I mean, when you left in '84 the first time or the second time, you could have just said that's it, but you came back and stayed till the very end, and you left one legacy. And like me, who's a GL fan, having you guys on over and over again, I love. It's just y'all. Thank you for what you've done over the
Well,
years and
thank
what
you.
you've done.
I'm thankful for all of it. And I feel like I was very, very lucky, very blessed to, I make a living at this. And there are tens of thousands of actors in my union who don't make a living at this.
Mm.
I'm in the top 5% probably of making a living at this, and that includes all the multi-gazillion dollar Tom Cruises of the world, and but somehow I've always persevered and managed to continue working, all the time. And I just feel like I'm just blessed. That's all. And I'm thankful for fans too. I really am. I do a lot of these cameos now where people can go on to Cameo and they can get a personalized message for a friend for their birthday or something like that. And in almost every one of them, I just say, that I realized a long time ago that what we do on our side of the camera has very little meaning. It has very little purpose without people like you who watch the show. I jokingly say to people when I meet them on the street, thank you for helping put my children through college. But it's true. I mean, it took me a lot of years to get there of really respecting and appreciating people who really watch these shows, or people who come out and go to the theater. That matters in my business, because without that, again, what we do means nothing. It's nothing without people who actually become involved and watch. And then in the case of soap opera, actually become part of our family.
Right.
And so I also like to say to people, Guiding Light went off now, what, 13 years ago, 14 years ago, maybe?
Yeah.
I say to people, I'm guessing you miss us, and just so you know, we miss you too. We just do.
Yeah.
It's people are always really, really gracious to me.
Right.
There's a little different dynamic with people I met while I was playing Ashland there on Young and the Restless, because that comes with the territory of playing a bad guy, but even those people were always really gracious to me. And they would say, you seem like such a nice person. How can you play such an evil character?
I mean, it's a role,
That's what I get paid for. That's what they're paying me for.
Right. But now I forgot what I was going to say. Now, thanks you.
Well, I think I'm probably done with daytime, but you never know. We'll see.
Right.
But I'll be out there doing theater gigs. I'll always have stuff posted on my Facebook page and Twitter and all that, so people know what's going on. I do want to make sure I get a copy of that clip package you just paid for me. I'd like to have that, and I think my mom would get a kick out of that.
So, the one I just did for you?
Yeah, make sure you send one off to me.
Well, most definitely.
And I appreciate it too. I like that. That was really nice.
No problem.
It got me kind of worked up over here, a little teary-eyed on this side.
Yeah, I meant to get you.
I did a lot.
Yeah,
I was young.
Legacy, man.
I forget how young I was when I started. I was young. I was 22 years old when I started in this business.
Yeah, and I, like I said, it's a legacy. You guys were touching me, fans. That's what I was going to say. We miss you too. It's not, I'm not to go on rambling, but it's not like the 80s. If you left one soap, you could go to another one. If it's more soaps on, now it's down to 4, and because. And all my children wanted to live. They did a temporary reboot online, but that didn't last long. It's like, and people have asked, could there be a reboot? Could it do it again? And who would come back? It's, and now it's only 4 shows now. It's like, just people wonder, where is everybody at?
I don't think they'll ever go to a 5-episode a week format for anything ever again.
Yeah.
Once these 4 shows are gone, that's going to be the end of that format. Soaps press on, because if you consider the shows that you watch on nighttime, Downton Abbey is a soap opera. My wife and I are watching All Creatures Great and Small on PBS. It's a soap opera. It's based on a novel, but it's a soap opera. The soap opera format continues on. Pretty Little Lies was a soap opera. It just was. It's a bigger budget and higher profile people, but it's a soap opera. So the idea of soap opera goes on.
Right.
But the 5-episode a week, 250 episodes a year, no. Yeah. There won't be a new version of any of that.
Right.
Ever. Maybe a half-hour show like Bold and the Beautiful, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But I just don't think the numbers work anymore.
Right. Robert, thank you for coming by today. I appreciate this and talking with you. Seeing you as Ashland Rock on Y&R, I was like, I really got to get him back now, because
well, thank you for the invite. I always appreciate you too, man.
No problem, man. And like I said, thank you again for what you did as Josh and now Ashlyn and everything else you've done. I keep in touch with Tina like all the
Yeah.
time still. She's a good friend of mine. It's her and Mark Dorwin, all the time. And Morgan too. He sends me a message every time we do something new with his music. And I told them and you the same thing. It's like, I was a fan of you guys. Y'all got me through my troubled years in school from being bullied. And it's like I always would come home and watch the soaps and see you guys. It's like y'all my friends,
That's nice.
even now it's like, y'all, I thank you guys. Y'all the best.
Well, thank you.
No problem. Well, I'm gonna end this and I'll bring you back in 1 second. But thanks for coming on for me today, Robert. And
All right.
I'll be right back with you. Oh,
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
No,
I
we're
was
good.
going
Thanks.
I was going to say, did you want to say anything to the fans, real?
No, just a shout out to the YNR fans, I think, who I think were a little unsure about me at the beginning of that run, but I think for the most part came on board with me on that journey. And I appreciate the all the discussion about when I left that show and people were not happy about that, and that actually made me feel pretty good. It made me feel like I was doing something right. So just a shout out to the YNR fans to say thank you. And then I don't have to do a shout out to the Guiding Light fans because they're always on my mind. And I'm always thankful that the generations of people who watched Guiding Light over the years, it's just fantastic. So
Yeah.
I'm always thankful for that. I don't regret any of it, and I'm glad to have had that career that I had.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, thank you, and thank you for having me on.
No problem. I'll be with you in 1 second. Well, guys, thanks for tuning in today. It's been a great day at Slick. I Better You, PE Slick podcast. I got another special guest coming aboard probably sometime later in a few weeks or next month, who I think fans will get a kick out of. He did a movie based on a children's TV show we watched growing up in the 90s. I'm not going to say who, it's a surprise. But anyway, thanks again for tuning in. I'm thankful to the fans who've been watching for the last, I guess now going into 4 years since I've been doing this podcast. I'm thankful for that. My soap family who's been coming on. And until next time, have a good day, be safe, and Ranger Mets, I went off into the West.